Observe a Saab taxiing down the runway right to left as you taxi outbound. He will give way to you. Just keep the speed up.
Whether you're piloting a plane or leading a business, your success depends on information. Airspeed, fuel, direction, costs, return on investment, market share. All this information has to be available on demand. But what if the information from the instruments wasn't accurate? Or suppose the pilot relied on only one instrument to fly the plane? These are unlikely scenarios, and yet this is exactly the situation for many executives today. How good are your instruments? Are they giving you the information you really need to lead your organization through turbulent times? Welcome to Flying Blind, the first program in the Harvard Business School Management Production Series, Measuring Corporate Performance. Traditional financial systems cannot provide the accurate, complete information managers need in today's business environment. In Flying Blind, we'll look at why this is so and introduce two innovative techniques: activity-based costing and the balanced scorecard. Traditional financial systems were designed for simpler times. Labor-intensive factories producing just a few products, with only a few competitors, and selling to local or regional markets. Today, business is anything but simple. Companies are dealing with rapidly changing technology, demanding customers, and many more competitors, not only locally, but from all around the world.
In the auto industry, the competition comes at us from Europe and from Japan and our domestic competitors. So we're facing this global challenge that's an onslaught on Chrysler Corporation.
In our business, all of the support activities have become more important, particularly because our customers are expecting more unique products, more unique services. Everybody's expecting a custom approach. So everybody who supports our sales team, everybody who supports our customer service activities has to be on board.
To satisfy demanding customers and hold their own in global competition, companies are proliferating products and services. In this complex, fast-moving environment, errors are more likely, and the consequences of errors are swifter and more severe.
It is a difficult environment. It is a worrisome one. It's one where you've got the two issues of can I deliver the service, and then can I make a profit at it? And so what is the cost of delivering that service, and will I actually be able to sustain that? Or will, having achieved all of our objectives and actually gotten the system fully stable and the service right, and knowing that we can deliver anywhere in the globe at any time of day or night, will you then find a competitor has just gotten there ahead of you with a different twist, and you're now going to lose your market share? So it is a really difficult environment to work in.
To succeed in this complex environment, companies need to know which products, services, and customers are profitable and which are not. Yet in many organizations, traditional financial systems cannot accurately provide this fundamental information. Robert Kaplan, Arthur Lowe's Dickinson Professor of Accounting at Harvard Business School, has worked with companies all around the country to analyze and solve this problem.
Because of the distorted signals that they're getting, companies don't really understand which are their most profitable products and which products are in fact costing them a lot of money. And as the expenses of the unprofitable products and customers load on the profitable ones, prices tend to go up, and it leaves that segment very vulnerable to focused competitors, especially competitors with more efficient processes.
By distorting costs and profits, traditional financial systems allow companies to make serious mistakes.
Excellent electronics companies like Hewlett-Packard and Tektronix came to realize that their engineers were designing products with far too many unique components, and that greatly increased their purchasing costs and their material handling and storage costs. The automobile companies just proliferated all the various options and features. Too many taillight assemblies, too many different types of steering wheels, too many colors, far more than the consumer was willing to pay for the variety. And certainly in the deregulated environment for financial institutions, banks started offering many, many different types of accounts and services to their customers without any notion about whether these accounts were profitable or even whether an entire customer relationship was profitable. One of the big problems is that the accounting systems seem to give numbers that have a great deal of accuracy to them. They're reported to 5 or 6 significant digits. Unfortunately, the managers are confusing precision with accuracy. Even though the numbers may have 5 or 6 digits in them, the first digit could be wrong.
These cost and profit distortions are made worse by the rapid growth of indirect and support activities.
Of course, indirect and support expenses have always existed. It's just that over the last few decades, the direct costs, which have been the focus of companies' accounting systems, have decreased, and there's been a big increase in the indirect and support expenses. So that procedures that were introduced decades ago to kind of average these indirect and support expenses across all products are now taking on a much greater impact and leading to much higher distortions because the amount of expenses that are being distributed in this way is much larger.
At Chrysler Corporation, changes in manufacturing technology were putting strains on the traditional financial system.
With the dramatic changes that are occurring in the world business environment, it was very difficult for Chrysler to operate with our prior costing structure.
The costing has been on direct labor basis. In other words, and what we're finding nowadays is that direct labor doesn't represent the bulk of your business. Robotics, for instance, if you had a man simply doing there, that's direct labor. But in a robotics operation, obviously, you need an engineer to make sure that the thing's programmed right. The programming of the activity is important to us. So that shifts from a direct labor activity to an indirect labor activity. And every time you put in the more sophisticated equipment, which we're all doing, then you're going more towards indirect labor. So it's important that you defined how much money is really being spent on indirect labor, and how are you controlling that? What are you doing with it?
When it was just a small piece of the equation, you could take some shortcuts and handle it fairly easily. In today's environment, where it's a large segment of the cost structure, you must look at it much more closely than we have in the past.
Chrysler's story is representative of what's happening to virtually all manufacturing companies today. In fact, this is exactly the problem that service organizations have, because their expenses are all indirect. In both these kinds of settings, we need more accurate systems to understand the demands for all of the indirect and support expenses that are being created by decisions made about individual products, services, and customers. The core problem is that the traditional financial systems cannot accurately assign this growing body of indirect and support expenses to each of the products, services, and customers of that organization. This prevents managers from understanding which products are its most profitable and where there are products and customers that are in fact highly unprofitable.
Which products are profitable? A company that grappled with this question is Maplehurst, a $200 million supplier of frozen dough products to supermarket bakeries in the U.S. and Canada. Company President Eric Riswick first noticed a problem with his traditional financial system when a new roll-making machine didn't seem to deliver the cost reductions expected.
We're talking about a piece of equipment that makes rolls. It's a staple product. It makes all kinds of rolls, from Kaiser rolls to hamburger rolls to hot dog rolls, all the staples. This equipment is high-speed equipment. We're talking about the ability to double our production capacity, meaning that the same number of people can produce twice as much product. And as we went through our exercise, as we went through the exercise of auditing the project, what we found out was that the product costs, in fact, had not gone down as much as we had expected.
We feel that we're reducing our costs, but it's not showing up because of the way we're.
Well, that's my feeling as well, and I think somehow we have to figure out how to reconcile what the accountants are telling us and what's what your gut feeling is.
We feel it's happening
in
production, yes.
And we dug a little bit further. We found out that, well, yeah, it was a good project. There was a lot of savings, but the savings somehow got spread out throughout the whole plant. Everything had got a little bit better.
The Maplehurst accounting system was assigning all the factory overhead uniformly to all products, case by case.
So although we were still producing the same number of cases, and although intuitively we knew that our costs had gone down, the accounting system was still burdening those products with the same amount of overhead as we had before. So what we had to resolve was, how do you make a pricing decision without having good, solid numbers?
You can really see why managers come to distrust the signals from their accounting system. They had made a good investment, but the accounting system didn't support their knowledge about what was really happening in the factory. Because they lose confidence and trust in the accounting system, then they start to launch special studies anytime they really want to find out what's happening, or if they know they have a major decision coming up. Another signal as to the inadequacies of traditional accounting and financial systems is how many special studies organizations have to do. And third, managers' intuition is generally pretty good. But being pretty good may not be good enough in today's environment. The intuition needs to be supported by facts, by data, and they're not getting that support from the systems now in place.
Activity-based management is a new approach to analyzing and managing product, service, and customer profitability. ABM is based on activity-based costing, which can accurately assign indirect and support expenses to individual products and services.
Activity-based costing takes a different view of the organization. Rather than view the organization as a set of isolated functional departments, ABC looks at the organization as a set of activities and interrelated processes. Some of these activities are setup activities, scheduling activities, purchasing activities. We always like to describe activities as verbs. They're actions, things that people are doing. Companies can start to see how much they're spending for their activities or processes. They see for the first time how inefficient some activities are, how much resources are being soaked up to perform routine activities like setup or introducing new products or purchasing or handling customer orders. They can also see that certain products or certain customers are demanding a disproportionate share of the organization's resources.
We were very keen into product line profitability, and we had to understand what our various product lines cost. And we understood that ABC provided much different numbers than what we had, and sometimes dramatically different. I mean, we were not talking about being off 1% or 2%. We could have been off thousands of percents.
Right within our minivan lineup, we offer that vehicle with the glass around it so that passengers can see out of the minivan. We also offer that product with steel sides for hauling light-duty flowers and electrical equipment. In the traditional costing system, the difference between those was very minor because it was based from direct labor involved, and the direct labor differences between the two were very minor. Under the ABC approach, The steel van on some of our components was more than twice as costly as the glass-sided van because of all the extra work that had to go on to provide a relatively low-volume product that was not that much different than the high-volume product, but yet it took a lot of time and effort to build it.
The impact can be staggering. Organizations have found that certain product lines or segments are 5 to 10 times more costly than they had ever been led to believe. And conversely, where they thought they were in low-margin business, they found that these margins were, in truth, 3, 4, or 6% higher. That may not seem like a lot, but you're in a very competitive environment with a lot of low-price competition. To find that in actuality you have 3 to 5% more margin is really a big insight for many organizations.
Well, today we're running the Essex plant with a much better understanding of our costs. We now know that the rolls and the new roll equipment did have the effect that we had anticipated. We know that we have improved our cost position. Those products are more profitable for us to make. On the other hand, we now know which products are using those other resources, and we have a much better costing system, and frankly, we know where we still have to improve.
Once activity-based costing has mapped the costs of indirect and support resources, business leaders use activity-based management to translate these insights to action.
The answer is not just to eliminate the high-cost products, but to rather be able to do those products more efficiently.
There are a whole variety of actions that companies take in order to transform that line from unprofitable to profitable. They can perhaps redesign some aspects of the product that are proving particularly expensive to manufacture. They can reprice it to customers and have the customers pay for the resources that are being required in order to make and deliver that product. Or they can go at the underlying processes that are being used in that product line, try to improve those processes, reduce the cost of the product, and thereby transform an unprofitable product into a profitable one.
It is a technique to help us with our overall change that we're embarking on at Chrysler, which is to have the employees work better in a team environment and to understand the situation in the upstream areas of their work and in the downstream areas.
The people see this almost as an empowerment tool to do the right thing for the company. So the response has been overwhelming. Now we have plant managers that are pounding their fist on the table saying, I want to be next.
Not just manufacturing locations, but we've also found it to be very, very useful and helpful to us in our staff operations, in our financing company, in our service and parts warehousing operations.
In a staffing environment, especially in large companies, I don't think anybody ever sat back and said, what does it cost to book a journal entry? What does it cost to pay an invoice? What does it cost to cut a payroll check? We realize that everybody has processes, and those processes can be mapped and costed, and over time can be improved.
Now, what do you do with this rec card once you pull it out of the rack?
After looking at it, I'll sign it up, take a copy of the rec with me to the job.
Okay, so you're telling the supervisor that you're going to take and look at that and do the troubleshooting on that job?
That's correct.
Okay.
Areas of inefficiency or potential waste jump right out at you, and it helps provide a shopping list of things to go after and prioritize for continuous improvement.
I mean, initially, the activity-based cost analysis displays the buckets of opportunity that these programs are designed to attack. It can also then give the priorities to go after those activities and business processes where the improvement will have the greatest impact on overall corporate profitability. And once you get into these programs, it helps the people make the appropriate trade-offs of cost and investment in order to improve quality and reduce cycle time. And at the end, it provides the benefits tracking. Did we really get the benefits to the bottom line?
Activity-based costings is a tool that we use internally and we use it externally. It has really helped us understand the costs and the cost drivers of our business internally, but ultimately it's helping us understand the profitability of our business on a segment basis, by customer, and finally it's helping us make our customers more successful.
Maplehurst differentiates themselves from other suppliers by helping customers analyze their own profitability using ABC.
It's going to give you an idea of how much square footage is dedicated to, say, cookies or rolls and on down the line, and you can use that information to tie it into the profitability, which again is going to make another decision-making tool for you guys to make changes if you think you need to.
And if we're making higher profit in one area, then what we can do is run our ads that way and promote that way according to space allocation.
Exactly.
Well, our vision, our long-term goal in our company is to help our customers to be more successful. Simply, we want to be the best supplier at making in-store bakeries successful.
Activity-based management helps business leaders take a cross-functional approach to their organizations, restructuring processes and managing profitability, using insights derived from activity-based costing.
Activity-based costing does an excellent job of structuring the cost side of the business. We also need to know what's going to generate revenues. How are we going to create future value in the organization?
The Balanced Scorecard is a management tool for creating future value by overcoming the limitations of traditional financial measurements.
Well, I think you always need financial measures. There's no doubt that at the end of the day, financial measures are the measure of the results and the attractiveness of the franchise that you have. But I think they're lagging measures. Financial measures don't really help you drive performance. I mean, they're the ultimate result of your activities.
You can't abandon financial measures. They create some a baseline of discipline for the organization. But you cannot create sustained business development and growth strictly on financial measures. And I don't think that people talk about that enough. We are too much focused on short-term financial performance and not enough focused on the balance of the longer and the short term.
Our concern about the financial system as the sole vehicle for measuring an operation is that it's simply one-dimensional. Any single dimension would be equally damaging, but the tendency of the one-dimensional financial system is to focus operations internally as compared to externally. And we believe that some capability of measurement, which has wider visibility in the organization, is essential to creating that external focus.
If managers are under too much pressure to deliver short-term financial results, they can achieve these by reducing their spending on activities that create future value. They can cut back on research and development, they can cut back on maintenance, they can cut back on employee training, and they can cut back on customer service. In the short run, the financials will look good because the spending has gone down. In the long run, however, profits are going to plummet because they have mortgaged the company by reducing the amount that they're investing in these value-creating activities.
The Balanced Scorecard supplements financial measurements with measurable objectives for achieving long-term value.
The Balanced Scorecard is a report card for the senior managers of a business unit. It enables them to view their organization through a balanced set of perspectives on financial performance, customer performance, internal performance, and innovation and improvement. And we want this report card to include a few, but not an excess, of measures in each of these perspectives.
The Balanced Scorecard starts with the financial perspective. What is success according to our shareholders? Then the customer's perspective is added. How do we become our customer's most valued supplier? The internal perspective identifies processes such as productivity and quality, which we must excel at. And the innovation perspective is all important for gaining long-term competitive advantage. Specific measures differ from company to company because they are derived from the strategy of each business unit. The measures selected will identify key elements of strategic success.
The use of the Balanced Scorecard initially was attractive to us because it gave us a vehicle for translating strategy to operations. It is not a system for measuring strategy. but in effect is a system for measuring operations that are being conducted consistent with the strategy of the operation.
FMC, a $4 billion corporation, is one of the country's most diversified organizations, participating in businesses ranging from defense and food handling equipment to industrial and agricultural chemicals.
FMC is an example of a company that had been managed to achieve strict financial objectives, and they had been very successful. They had achieved high return on shareholders' equity and had delivered superior stock price performance all through the decade of the 1980s. But they were unsure where the future growth opportunities were going to come from.
We were trying to understand how we could maintain that performance and grow the corporation at a faster clip than we had historically done. That change in strategic direction implied a certain change in the systems that we use to measure the corporation, and the balanced scorecard was very timely in doing that.
One of FMC's products is lithium, the lightest of all metals, with dozens of applications from batteries to pharmaceuticals. FMC's lithium division was one of 6 pilot sites for the balanced scorecard.
We saw the potential for breakthrough performance in our existing operations. Specifically, if you could choose outside financial criteria, the 10 or 12 most important elements in the operation of a single business, and you could figure out a way to set long-term targets for significant improvement in each of those variables. Taken together, those variables had the potential for a massive improvement in financial performance over the long term.
At Lithium Division, the balanced scorecard team identified on-time delivery as a key strategic objective from the customer perspective.
On-time delivery at Lithium Division had been, in the past couple of years, ranging in the 60 to 70% level, something we weren't very proud of. But as we got involved in the balanced scorecard and we started to pay attention to this area, we found immediately there was some very specific things we can do. One, for example, was to pick orders a day earlier. Now that we're doing that, we've boosted the on-time delivery from, say, 70% to 85% just on that one area.
Vicki, how about going and pulling this for me?
Sure, be right back.
Now, as we followed through on some other ideas on a similar vein, we've been able to achieve in the last 2 months in excess of 90% on-time delivery.
We do have that material in inventory, so we'll ship it out and you can expect to receive it by next Wednesday.
Initially, the balanced scorecard will be developed at the top of the business unit. It has to be because it has to link tightly to the strategic objectives of that business unit. But then we want to be able to cascade down the balanced scorecard measures to operational measures.
Purchase order number?
We had customer on-time delivery and customer complaints. We had some of those measures before the balanced scorecard, but they were primarily in the marketing department and were not necessarily linked into the whole division and not linked into the manufacturing operation, and that's where we can impact the on-time delivery most, because those guys, once you realize we need to get this out, and if we don't get it out on time, my numbers are going to look bad. And they're going to be posted on the boards all over the division, and it says right here, this area didn't perform. We didn't get our customers' product to them on time. And I think Balanced Scorecard provides that focus, and that's the real benefit here.
Another company benefiting from Balanced Scorecard is Barclays Bank. Managing Director Marilyn Spearing is using the scorecard to give strategic direction to a new business called Global Electronic Banking.
The focus of the entire business is to put computer capability to our customers so they can access our processing systems directly. But it's primarily focused on the wholesale market, large corporates, fund managers, correspondent banks, be able to give them better access into all the processing. So it's very much a computer-oriented business.
One of the big challenges for Spearing was organizing a business unit out of what had been a collection of support functions.
prior to creating an operating services division, many of these activities like payment transactions and electronic banking were almost seen as support roles to the core banking business. And that's a whole different focus. You know, different focus of looking at something that's a business versus looking at something as just a support function.
Focus on customer satisfaction.
Spearing and her team developed a scorecard to help the new business maintain a customer focus, with measures such as quality, product line attractiveness, ranking in professional journals, and customer acquisition and retention.
Everything is related to identifying and anticipating where value is going to be derived in the eyes of customers. And that's why customer focus is so important, because that's the way you build wealth.
Thanks, Barry.
Many of these measures were always in the business somewhere or in the bank. Whenever you did a project, you were supposed to do an ROI and then do quarterly returns back and judge that. But it's just really easy to have all of that get lost and not have it relate to the business. So where Balanced Scorecard came in under the 4 categories was it kept it really close in our minds about, right, these are critical if we're going to do what we've set out to do.
The biggest change with the Balanced Scorecard is we are now elevating the set of non-financial measures on customers, on internal processes, and on innovation and improvement to the same high level where only financial measures existed before. This means that when senior managers review the operations, they will see at the same time as the financials these key indicators of customers, processes, innovation, and learning.
Activity-based costing, activity-based management, the Balanced Scorecard. Today, these innovative management systems are being used successfully by companies large and small to streamline business processes and focus attention on the key drivers of long-term profit improvement. And what about you? Do you know which are your most profitable products, services, and customers? Do you know if you're actually losing money serving certain customers or markets? Are your margins steadily declining because of constant increases in indirect and support costs? Have you been guiding your business according to short-term financial results while neglecting other measures of long-term growth potential? You may well need more effective measures of corporate performance. In the remaining tapes of this series, we'll take a more detailed, in-depth look at the success stories of Chrysler, Maplehurst, FMC, and Barclays Bank, and other companies using ABC and the Balanced Scorecard. Case examples illustrating implementation issues and techniques, customer relationships redefined, and products and services restored to profitability by executives who are using these measurement systems to navigate their organizations efficiently while creating long-term value. In the North Sea off Aberdeen, Scotland, a rockwater ship sends divers to the seabed to connect an undersea oil field to a production rig. Rockwater is a $200 million undersea construction company operating in a variety of locations and cultures around the world. Recently formed by the merger of several international companies, Rockwater faced a serious challenge: to communicate direction to a highly diverse body of employees.
As diligently as we were at communicating the mission, it simply wasn't addressing to the 1,100 employees that we had, the 17 different nationalities, a sense of direction.
In the hills of North Carolina, a division of FMC produces dozens of products from lithium ore. It is one of 27 divisions producing a great variety of products and materials for the FMC Corporation. Headquartered in Chicago, the company concentrated for years on producing superior return on investment. But concerned about its ability to sustain this performance, FMC management decided that the company must grow faster.
FMC has, for a large number of years, been a top performer in terms of the return on investment of the corporation. We were trying to understand how we could maintain that performance and grow the corporation at a faster clip than we had historically done.
In both of these companies, we see management striving to implement strategies that will create future value. Building this future value and understanding the trade-offs involved in achieving this goal are addressed by a management technique called the Balanced Scorecard. Robert Kaplan is Arthur Lowes Dickinson Professor of Accounting at Harvard Business School. He is a leading authority on measurement systems that help managers lead their organizations to greater profitability and value.
Primary goal of senior executives is to create long-term value for their organization. They need to be able to operationalize what their strategy is, to see what they have to do today in order to create that long-term value. Today's financial performance is only one of those indicators.
In developing a balanced scorecard, corporate strategy is first converted to specific objectives in 4 key areas. One of these areas is financial, but financial measures alone are not enough.
The financial measures of the most recent period's performance will tell you something about how well the company operated during that period, but there could be processes that they developed during that period for customers and for new products and for new capabilities that will create long-term value that have yet to show up on the financial statements. And conversely, some organizations may have cut back on some of those investments for long-term capabilities. In the short run, this will make their current financial performance look better. But in the process of making those financial statements look better, they have mortgaged their future.
Because the Balanced Scorecard focuses on both current and future performance, it examines the business from 4 perspectives. The financial perspective contains those objectives that reflect shareholder expectations. For example, return on investments or growth in profits. The customer perspective contains objectives for meeting customer expectations, measurements like market share and on-time delivery. The internal perspective focuses on companies' internal processes to see which ones they must excel at to create future financial value and keep customers satisfied. Examples might include waste control, cycle time, or cost management. The innovation and learning perspective focuses on activities required for future success. Developing new products and exploring employee suggestions would be examples.
This is how we're trying to communicate this idea that
Professor Robert Kaplan and management consultant David Norton worked together on a year-long project with 12 companies. From that project came the Balanced Scorecard.
A lot of people come up now and they've read the ideas and they think they have a balanced scorecard because they're measuring non-financial measures. But what we've learned is a balanced scorecard is a lot more than simply measures.
Yeah, those existing systems are still measuring the past. They're measuring both financial and non-financial, but they're measures of past performance, and we want the companies to be looking into the future. What are the drivers of future performance?
Every manager knows that measurement motivates. If you put a spotlight on something, it's going to influence the way people act. And if you believe that, and you want your organization to move to the future, then you should measure the pathway to the future.
Here in the North Sea, Rockwater is working on its largest project. Amerada Hess, one of Rockwater's major customers and a leading British oil company, is developing a new source, the Scott Field.
This is the Scott platform. It's a central processing and utilities complex for the Scott Field. We're developing oil from the seabed, and by the middle of the decade it'll be producing something of the order of 10% of the UK's needs for oil. So it is a big field.
Over 800 men work and live in this complex of platform and ship, where much of Rockwater's work is done on the seabed, over 300 feet below the surface.
This is one of our semi-submersible construction vessels, the SEMI II. From here, we are conducting saturation diving to achieve tie-in of pipelines through the platform system.
Okay, Neil, both of those valves were shut, mate.
The first job we're going to be doing is a tree...
Rockwater was formed as a result of merging together a number of companies that hadn't really been performing very well. They hadn't been performing, it was felt, because they lacked certain resources, both physical in terms of the ships that we provide our services from, as well as some human resources. By bringing together the various companies that we did, we thought we addressed most of those strategic shortcomings.
Management of this new company had a mission: to make Rockwater the market leader in undersea construction. The strategy for doing this was to build a new kind of long-term, value-added relationship with customers through extraordinary service.
Our hardware isn't particularly unique. You know, the categories of personnel we employ were much of a muchness. What we particularly want to differentiate ourselves by doing is adding value to our customer service.
It's incredible, isn't it? And then that grey lock clamp goes over the top, and this gives you the seal between the two. Very expensive.
The problem was that in the past, Rockwater's customer relationships had been built mostly around cost rather than service. Rockwater's management tried to communicate this change in strategy to its workforce.
I was visiting a project team, and the project manager said, listen, I understand the mission. I buy into the mission. But it doesn't provide enough direction. I don't know what it really means to me. I can understand it as kind of grand terminology, but I don't know what it means to me. That frustration, that sense of lack of direction, was permeating almost everything we did.
Norm Chambers brought in Dave Norton to help develop a greater sense of direction at Rockwater. They accomplished their goal using the Balanced Scorecard.
When we first started, the whole objective was to try and find a better way to communicate the mission and the vision that you were trying to put into your organization.
You know, I had this great void of understanding between mission and, you know, the reality that our project teams felt, and how to bridge that. You know, how do we make the mission real? Mm-hmm. How do we make the mission real? And Balanced Scorecard provided us with a vehicle, provided us with an agenda for discussion, provided us with the ability to bridge that gap.
In developing its Balanced Scorecard, Rockwater worked first on the financial perspective.
Ultimately, it's our shareholders' view that's important, so we went and spoke to them. Their views have been updated and reflected in the measurement system.
Based on this input, Rockwater set objectives and measures that included cash flow, project profitability, and return on capital employed. Next, Rockwater focused on the critical customer perspective.
If you don't have some kind of a scorecard that has a customer supplier relationship in it, it can't work.
No, that's right. Both internally and externally. And that's why it was so important for us to go out to our customers while we're building a scorecard, and for our employees to hear what our customers have to say at that stage.
And generally the attitude towards safety,
the attitude towards safety has been
for all
good.
the personnel.
Absolutely.
Going out to our customers gave us some valuable insights onto what they would like to see out of an ideal contractor, which didn't actually agree with our view at times of what we thought they'd like to see. So it was a good eye-opener to many of our people.
Based on this customer feedback, Rockwater developed measurements that would help them build long-term, value-added relationships with customers. Measurements included price competitiveness, market share, and customer satisfaction.
Two of our measures are very firmly aimed at receiving direct feedback from the client. We're getting a level of detailed feedback that we didn't previously receive.
Was achieving schedule as important as we had perceived it was?
I think there's two aspects of that. I think.
But in addition to getting this feedback, We're also trying to use these measures to stress to our people the importance we place on being customer-focused. So it's being used as a tool to try and change behavior in the organization.
By monitoring and reacting to our clients' needs on an ongoing basis, it's certainly the case that the chances of having a satisfied customer are increased, and that should lead to more work from a particular client. That's got to be the ultimate aim on this.
The relationship with Rockwater has been extremely good. I think Rockwater has similar values to Amerada Hess. We're both committed to excellence in what we do respectively.
With its financial and customer perspectives firmly established, Rockwater turned to the internal perspective. What must it do well internally to meet its financial and customer objectives?
Our internal business process measures, these are the ones that we developed with the assistance of all our internal managers and their employees. And these are the ones that we feel are the biggest motivation to our people. They're certainly the ones that all our employees can influence in one way or another. Again, they're very much focused on processes.
Measures included rework, project management, and frequency and cost of safety incidents. They also included one aimed squarely at building long-term relationships with customers.
We weren't spending the level of time with our customers that we should have in order to understand what their future work was going to be.
So we decided to pick a measure of, let's look at the number of hours our people spend discussing new work with the client. If we can get in there much earlier and talk to the client, possibly at the conceptual design stage, we can hopefully influence their thoughts towards our particular strengths, capabilities, or even hardware, which will again obviously help us at the tender stage, and ultimately may lead not even to them coming out to tender, but that we can actually negotiate a contract direct with them.
Finally, Rockwater developed objectives and measures for the learning and innovation perspective. It included measures for continuous improvement and new products. It also included measures for what Rockwater called an empowered workforce.
We very much in Rockwater wanted to focus this on our people, directly on our people. You know, were we motivating the right behavior? Were we creating the right environment to enable them to improve? We have some measures in there which tend to give feedback really on how our people feel about the company, how much they want to contribute to the company.
Rockwater measured this feedback through a suggestion system and staff satisfaction surveys. These surveys, in fact, revealed a problem. Half of Rockwater's employees worked at sea. They felt their ideas and suggestions were being ignored by management which worked on land.
The drilling down of employee satisfaction down to staff suggestion scheme enabled us to flip that around. And management was mandated to respond to any staff suggestions within 7 days' time. Our offshore workforce then started to come forth with a whole host of very real and very good changes that could take place. Very small things which enabled us to save hundreds of thousands of pounds, which heretofore hadn't come to light.
As Rockwater began using the balanced scorecard, it discovered links between the different perspectives. One discovery began with a problem.
We had a heck of a time trying to get our employees to identify to one of our shareholder measures, which was return on capital employed. It simply was a measure that had very little value to them. However, there was a very clear sense among our project teams about accounts receivable. Now, where this all comes together is that we, through our measurement system, found there was a direct correlation between customer satisfaction and the length of time it took us to collect our accounts receivable. Those customers that ranked us in the top percentile paid us 15 days earlier than those customers that did not.
Rockwater project managers were able to clearly link their ability to influence return on capital employed to collecting accounts receivable. They now understood how the measures in all 4 balanced scorecard perspectives were linked together. The balanced scorecard is now helping Rockwater carry out its strategy of building long-term customer relationships. Since beginning the scorecard, the amount of business from value-added customers has increased.
Okay, ready to come up. Okay, Brian, come on up.
The change is now apparent. There are things happening. There is changes in behavior. There is a focus on the value of the customer that certainly wasn't there in the previous organizations that we brought together to form Rockwater.
At Rockwater, we saw how the Balanced Scorecard led to strategic change in the way employees work with customers. At FMC, we again see a company fostering change. But here, we will concentrate on the process the company used to develop its own scorecard.
FMC is a collection of 27 quite diverse operating divisions. In the past 10 to 15 years, these divisions had all been held accountable to achieving consistent short-term financial performance. What the senior managers of FMC came to realize as they entered the decade of the 1990s was that managers had been trading off some long-term growth opportunities in order to deliver this predictable short-term financial performance. The Balanced Scorecard now provided them with an opportunity to make those trade-offs visible and to signal to the operating managers of those 27 divisions that it was important for them to keep thinking about and generating growth opportunities for the future, not just delivering on their financial performance targets.
Once corporate management decided to implement the Balanced Scorecard, it chose 6 divisions to be pilot sites. This proved to be an effective approach.
A significant part of the ownership that we were able to develop in the pilot systems for the Balanced Scorecard related to the fact that each individual manager felt like he had defined the system that he was implementing, as compared to I implemented a system which the corporation told me to implement in the way the corporation told me to do it. Indeed, we dramatically avoided instructions from the corporations about what to do.
The lithium division was a pilot site. As one of 2 major lithium producers in the world, it mines lithium ore to produce a variety of compounds for use in products such as pharmaceuticals and batteries. For division management, the Balanced Scorecard was an opportunity.
From our perspective at Lithium Division, the number of initiatives in the company were pretty much overpowering. When we started to look at the Balanced Scorecard, we felt that this would be potentially an excellent way for us to integrate and consolidate a lot of the measures to satisfy a number of the initiatives.
Though Schrader was enthusiastic about the Balanced Scorecard, he knew the implementation process would be demanding.
It is an immense drain on your time and on your person, given all the other responsibilities you have. I think you've got to develop a lot of momentum within your own organization, which I was able to do with my direct staff, and now that's starting to transcend the organization. But it takes a strong champion to come out with this and to keep the momentum on it.
Schrader picked his controller, Rose Andrews, to work with him in developing the scorecard. Andrews headed a small core implementation team that led a process composed of 4 steps. First, develop strategic objectives in each of the scorecard's 4 perspectives: financial, customer, internal, and innovation. Second, select measures that help assess progress toward the objectives. Third, set targets for each measure. And fourth, communicate the scorecard to the organization and manage around it.
The company's Balanced Scorecard process will usually start with a meeting of the senior executives of the business unit. At this meeting, the executives discuss whether they really do have a clear strategy.
We're validating.
This meeting assures that the organization does have a clarity as to what the strategy and the strategic objectives are. Frequently, this meeting is taken up with getting consensus on those objectives.
And Carlos,
You said that very well. We have producing locations in 3 continents, and that gives us an advantage that none of our competitors have.
That's really a powerful asset for our lithium division that we should be able to build in very effectively into our strategy.
After an initial meeting of the senior executives, Then subsequent meetings are held with middle managers and engaging them as to whether they agree with the measures that are being proposed.
During this second phase of the process, the FMC implementation team interviewed over 30 division managers to get their input.
We felt that it was important that these measures be identifiable by all of our different types of people, our marketing people, our manufacturing people, our technology or R&D effort, as well as the financial group. And those 30 or 40 individuals were interviewed in a team atmosphere in order to get their perspectives on what's important to the business.
The innovative aspect of the balanced scorecard is that the discussions that are taking place now at the middle management and at the operational levels are being driven by the strategic objectives at the top of the organization.
An important issue arose in these discussions about the kinds of measures to be used.
You know, what can we measure on across all of those varieties?
Do we want to measure activities or results?
We did struggle with trying to identify numbers that were not too fuzzy, but yet incorporated the spirit of the balanced scorecard, if you will, and not just dropping everything down to the financial impact.
As you get into this, you'll find that some measures are quite objective, they're at hand, and provide a clear target, such as on-time delivery, or quality measures, such as number of defects or yield. Other measures are somewhat more difficult to get at and require some subjective estimates. These could be measures of employee morale. They could be measures of quality time spent with the customer. My feeling is that a balanced scorecard can allow for a balance between hard objective measures and some subjective measures if the organization feels that those are very important.
After considering all the feedback from middle management, the implementation team found itself with more measures than it could handle.
When we started to look at the number of measures that we create, obviously, like all other divisions probably, we came up with more measures than we could possibly track. So we went through a sorting process. A number of the measures were kind of honing in on the same thing. So we clustered the measures and kind of put them into groups to come down to what we thought was a reasonable number.
We ended up, I think, with a good balanced scorecard in that we have 4 measures in each of the 4 categories, and that sounds very well balanced. And being from the financial area, that feels good. At the same time, 16 measures is a lot of measures.
There were 4 really key measures. I mean, there were certainly the 16 we talked about in total, but there were 4 that we thought could really significantly improve our business. And those were the 4 that we really spent most of our time on.
The 4 measures included on-time delivery, cost versus best in class, developing a new source of raw lithium, and new product development. Once these measures were selected, the implementation team worked with division managers to set targets for each measure.
Targets give people something to shoot for. The measures themselves will create focus in that people will understand now, okay, well, what's important to the company. If it's on a wall, very visible to many individuals, people will understand that it is important enough to spend time to think about it and look at it. But people need to know where we're going. What do we hope to achieve by measuring this process?
These targets should be established based on what perhaps our best competitors are doing or even what our future customers will be demanding. They should be stretch targets. And the targets should be such that if we deliver and fulfill on those targets, then the financial performance of the organization will be at a dramatically higher level.
After targets were set, management communicated the scorecard to the entire organization using videos, bulletin boards, status meetings, and progress reports.
One of the things we need to do up front is communicate the purpose of the scorecard to all of our employees to make sure that they didn't believe that this was just another report, another piece of paper, another thing to stick in a file. We quickly then moved to demonstrating to people what this meant to their job, how on-time deliveries were affected by their performance. how they could influence the development pipeline, how they could submit ideas, how we could grow.
Once employees understood how they could influence results, progress became apparent. The need to improve became clear at all levels of the division. Because of the increased attention it has received, on-time delivery has improved nearly 40%.
So we'll ship it out and you can expect to receive it by next Wednesday.
New product development has also improved. Management now feels it is better able to identify and focus on those new product ideas which offer the greatest opportunity.
We have certainly seen a range of results versus the targets that we've set across the 16 measures we have. Some have gone down, some have gone up. But I think the one thing that's really important is the 4 measures that we've focused on in our balanced scorecard are measures where we're making improvement in all 4 of those. We've got the right measures, and then
the process of getting to a balanced scorecard takes several months, but we're not doing continuous process all through those months. And the process itself is valuable. Organizations that have gone through it find that it makes clear to everybody involved what the vision of the company is and how they're going to achieve it. So they view this entire process as a value-added process through the clarity it gives and the focus it gives to the entire organization.
When you buy into this, you've got to be willing to put the time and energy and commitment into it. But at the end of the day, I think the rewards and benefits you can reap from this are tremendous. I'm certainly still a believer, and I've been into this now for 18 months.
Because of the success of its pilot program, FMC has now implemented the balanced scorecard in all 27 operating divisions. Management throughout the company is developing a measurement system that will allow them to balance both short-term financial performance and long-term growth opportunities.
We've come a long way with the balanced scorecard in just a few years. We understand the concepts better, and I think the extension of the applicability of it has been quite significant. The implementation process has really turned out to be a key one.
I agree. Implementation is the opportunity. The scorecard creates an opportunity for an organization. It better describes their strategy, gives them a way to communicate it. But once they do that, they can't stop because it impacts the way they pay people, it impacts the way that they invest their money, it impacts the way they try to change the organization. So in effect, building a scorecard is like letting a genie out of the bottle. And once the genie's out, you can't put it back.
And that's a very positive aspect of the scorecard because this genie of change is exactly what companies need today. They need to be iterative, they need to be adaptable and flexible to survive and prosper in this very dynamic environment.